Great. All right. Thank you so much for joining us for NAMI Maryland's 40th annual conference. My name is Marquise Forth, and I am a staff member here with NAMI Maryland, and I will be your moderator for this session today. This workshop session is Ask Me About My Mental Health, presented by Denise Valentine from NAMI Maryland and Sarah Crimmins from NAMI Harford County. You can read more about our amazing presenters, including their full bios, in the digital conference program on the official conference website. The stigma associated with mental health can make it difficult for individuals to talk about their mental health. There is a need for families and providers to obtain deeper information and understanding of lived experience. This open Q&A will allow family members and providers a safe place to ask questions in an effort to increase awareness and decrease stigma. If this is not the workshop you meant to attend, please click the back button on your browser or click on the sessions button on the left-hand side of your screen to return to the full list of workshops we have available. We will be addressing questions at the end of this presentation. If you have any questions as the presentation continues, please post them to the Q&A on the right-hand side of your screen. We will be reviewing questions as they come in, and if something in particular is unclear or needs to be expanded, we will ask our presenters after their presentation has concluded. We are pleased to offer closed captioning for this year's conference. Captioning is only available for attendees using a desktop. To enable captioning, please click on the CC icon below the display of our presenters at the bottom of your screen. Once you click the icon, the video displays will become smaller and you will see the captions being generated underneath. If you have any comments, concerns, or technical issues, please post them to our chat and our technical system will address them accordingly. I'd now like to welcome our presenters for today's workshop, Denise Valentine and Sarah Crimmins. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, everyone, for coming to join us, and thank you, Marquise, for that wonderful introduction. My name is Sarah Crimmins, and my senior year in college, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder with mixed mania. Well, mixed mania kind of came later, but I also have anxiety, and I have been living with my disorder since I was like 21 or 22, and I was a teacher for a period of that time, but it was too much of a roller coaster for me, and I couldn't concentrate on teaching and everything, and so I left teaching. I have been hospitalized probably 10 times or a little bit over that. And then I also was taken by to the hospital by the police 2 times. And I attempted suicide twice. I've had a pretty level couple of years right now. I did have 2 setbacks. One of the medications I was on caused me to caused me to become toxic in that medication, and so we had to go back to the drawing board and find another medication. And then this past year, in February, I had some issues with my hormones, and I had to go back to the drawing board with the doctor and say it started with stress at work, because stress tends to cause a flare, cause my illness to become more serious. And so I had some stress at work, and it caused me to become suicidal. And then I eventually went into my hormones went out, and I was in a full-blown suicidal state. And the doctor, my psychiatrist and my OBGYN worked together to find the right medication. And right now I'm perfectly stable, and I'm doing well again. I work with NAMI, the programs and training team, about 15-20 hours a week, just enough to keep me busy. I'm also on disability, so we found a way that we could work with disability and with NAMI to come up with something where I could be working some, because working some really helps me out. So that's my part of my story. I'll be telling my story in a more completed version after lunch if you would like to come hear me. But I will let Denise share some of her story with you.
Hi, I'm Denise Valentine. I have been diagnosed with recurrent major depression, post traumatic stress disorder, and generalized anxiety disorder. I am 68 years old, and I was diagnosed, I guess, in my 30s. Um, I had two small children at the time. So my children have been raised by me and their father jointly, and they're pretty successful. Thank you for that. And uh, I'll open the floor for questions.
Does anybody have any questions? We're both very open about our illness, and so if you have any question whatsoever, feel free to ask it. I am very open. I give presentations to the police officers, and I give presentations in colleges, and so I'm used to getting a variety of questions, and I really enjoy being able to answer them to help people understand more what the illness is all about. Some of the questions that I've received before, people often ask, what would you do for someone who has a mental illness, and who either doesn't recognize it, or you're trying to work with them when they're having a bad day or something. And um, I say the best thing to do when you're dealing with someone who has a mental illness is just to be there for them. My sister has suffered many mental health crises, and the best thing I can do for her, she's far away now, so I don't get to communicate with her very much. But when I was in college and working for little bit of time, we would go out to lunch and listen to music and just hang out, just do things that they like with them, because you never know what kind of connection you'll make, and you never know what way that you're having a positive impact on them if you're just spending time with them. You don't have to tell them anything. You don't have to, go into their illness or whatever. You can just spend time with them, and that's a very effective way of, uh, dealing with someone who might have a mental illness, who doesn't acknowledge it, or who acknowledges it but doesn't doesn't know what to do. See, we have some questions.
Yes.
Maddie Evans wants to know, what was your response when you were first diagnosed? Denise, did you want to go first on that?
I I didn't accept the diagnosis. That was my response, denial. Um, but as time went on, it was apparent that I had anxiety issues, and later I was diagnosed with post traumatic stress disorder. That diagnosis I'm forced to accept. As
I
some,
was. Oh, go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Denise.
No, you
Go
go.
ahead.
As someone diagnosed with a diagnosed mental illness, how do you manage self care as a priority while also taking care of loved ones with possibly worse diagnoses than yourself? I don't consider any diagnosis is worse than another one. There are common symptoms there are symptoms that are common amongst all of the diagnoses. So individuals living with a mental health condition have more in common than they have differences.
I was going to say, to answer Maddie's question, I was very compliant when I was first diagnosed. I was always very med compliant, even though they didn't get the meds right for a long time. And so when I was first diagnosed, I had gone to a doctor. One of my friends took me to the doctor, and she helped fill out all the forms because I was just too out of it to do all that. And then the doctor gave me medicine. He said, "You're bipolar," and he gave me medicine. And I felt like, okay, gave me an answer to all my problems that I was having at the time. So I went home or went to my dorm, and I took my medicine and I went to bed, and I woke up the next day and I fell asleep blow drying my hair. And my friends are like, "You have to go to class, Sarah." And I was like, "You don't understand. I cannot stay awake. I cannot go to class." So it was well on one end, I accepted the diagnosis for a little while. On the other hand, I didn't know what to do about it because I had what many different doctors. And after the end of the school year, I was like, "Oh, I'll move to Texas," which I did. I moved to Texas after my senior year in college. Um, and then that's where the problems really started coming out. And I had sensory sensitivity, and loud noises bothered me, and I would clean the house for like hours on end in the early in the morning. So that's when it really started happening for me, and I had to really accept that this was a serious thing. Self care for me is a very difficult thing because, well, I guess it's not super difficult. I do a lot of stuff. Um, Self care for me is going out with my friends, and you know, that's where I really fall. I like to hang out with people. I don't do as much stuff like I should do, like walk or my diet. Like there's things like that that could use improvement. But I do spend time with people because that is my best thing to do is spend time with people because it helps me to be it gives me joy to spend time with people. And there was a time this fall or this spring that I was talking about where I had gotten sick, and with the hormone issue, and I spent time with my friends. I didn't want to, but I spent time with them because I knew that spending time with them would give me would be positive for me.
I wanted to finish answering Jeff's question about making self care a priority. One thing I have found that was helpful for me was to set boundaries. And that means when something is becoming toxic, to exit the situation. It also means that to make sure that you only include in your inner circle people that are supportive and not antagonistic. Um, and like I said before, I don't consider anyone's diagnosis worse than another, but being respectful of other people's boundaries and being respectful of the way they feel that they need their space created for them to cope. And how did your family support you? And what other forms of support are you using? Um, my family, their support varied during different times of my life. Sometimes they were very supportive, and at other times they weren't. Everyone has their own issues going on in my family. My mother has 6 grandchildren. All of them have mental illness. She had 5 children. 3 of the 5 have depression. Um, so um, mental illness is prevalent in my family. My father is was one of 12 children, and out of that 12, mental illness impacted two um, two of the families, his family and his sister's family. So we joke with one another and say we created our own support group. It's enough of us to be a support group. So the ones of us who are impacted with mental illness help each other. And like I said, we're our own support group. We intercede for each other when when another family member is being less than supportive.
For to answer your question, Ernestine, um, at the beginning of my illness, I didn't want my family any part of it. I didn't tell them. I don't know if I thought they wouldn't believe me or I just was somewhat in denial, but I didn't tell them anything. And then I I wrote poetry a lot when I was ill, and I showed my dad one of my poems about how mental illness made me feel or what it was like to go through this mental illness. And he's like, "Oh, that's very symmetrical." And I was like, "Really, Dad?" And so it took them a while to get it. But my father has when we were looking for a doctor when had reached my lowest of low points and was very reckless and just not doing positive things. I was very promiscuous and different things like that were all reckless. My dad sat down with me and he's like, we got a recommendation for a doctor. And he the doctor was $725 for an for a introductory session. And my dad said, okay. And I was like, okay, you do realize this is like a lot of money. And he said, sure. But he's like, if it's going to help you, then I'm willing to do it. And he paid for my doctor all the way up until I could take over and pay for him. And family support means the world to me. I have one sister I can call if there's a problem. I come from 4 sisters and 1 brother. And anxiety and depression and bipolar run in the family. In fact, my mom thinks now that my great grandfather was probably bipolar. But they support me, they cheer me on. My mom's like, you can do this. Every time I get do something positive, she's like, write it down so you remember this good about yourself. So I'm like, okay, Mom. And my dad is he's like the strong, silent type, but he's very supportive. And he and my doctor get along great. They like crack each other up when they talk to each other. So it's a very positive thing for me. Let's see if we have somebody in the Q&A. Oh, okay, we have that one. Okay, we got all the ones in the Q&A. And yes, my parents helping me out was a huge blessing to me. Any other questions or comments or thoughts? Does anyone have any questions about people that they're working with or have relationships with that might have different issues or different thoughts that you wonder might help them or not.
I want to comment on Maddie's family support is so important. That's crucial and it's critical to everyone's recovery is to have support. But the best kind of support is family support. That acceptance of your family, knowing that you're not a disappointment to them or that you're not considered a failure by them, is crucial to keeping your self esteem. And self esteem also is having a positive outlook and a good self esteem is how you can survive depression. So, yes, family support is a blessing. Where do you suggest people look for support if their family is not in the picture? Um, I had a period where my family was not in the picture. They weren't supportive. Um, During that time, I became homeless. And what various friends of mine would allow me to sleep on their couch or stay with them. So you can look for support. If you have to look for support outside of your family, it's best to be careful about that support and make sure that it is positive support. And where to look for it? If with your family, outside of your family, your various friends that you've built up over the years. I had friends that abandoned me, but your various friends that you've built up over the years, and if you don't have stable friendships, isolation is not going to help you. So you have to reach out, go to churches, join game night at a restaurant, things like that. Just reach out.
I would agree with Denise. There's also the NAMI connection support groups or NAMI family to family classes or the family support groups. So NAMI can be a great place to reach out and find people who understand you. And also, I have good friends that, and my closest friends know about my illness. I used to go around telling everybody because I was so open, but now I'm a little more careful in who I tell all the time. But I have a lot of friends. I have a core group of friends who is my support system, and they will tell me, don't do this. This is not a good idea. Um, and so stuff that I wouldn't talk about with my parents that I talk about with my friends. So that might be an avenue of support if you don't have family support. I have both. Very fortunately, I have friend support, which I get for some things, and family support, which I get for other things. And then I reach out and volunteer and do stuff for church sometimes, or just different varieties of places you can go that have people that can help you feel supported.
Anywhere that you're welcome. Make sure you're
Hmm.
welcome. How do you deal with family or friends who are ashamed of you publicly talking about your mental health, especially on social media? I just do, honey, be blessed and be blocked. It's just that simple.
Yeah, it's very Denise probably put it best. You just I have one sister whom I love, But I'm never quite sure how she feels about my illness, or, she's a very hard worker. She works like, I don't know, 60 hours a week, and she's just, her lifestyle is very different from mine. And I'm never sure how she feels about me, but in the end, I can't worry about it. I have to live my life, and they have to live their life. Um, and fortunately, my parents aren't ashamed of my telling my story. I also haven't ever told it in front of them because I don't know what they would think of the whole story. They know like most of it, but when I was at my most reckless, I did not keep them informed of what I was doing, so they may not. Yeah, did not give them the FYI download or anything. So sometimes I think it's better that they not know the whole story, but you just have to do what works best for you. And if you want to tell your story, then tell your story, and you know, let them deal with their own stuff. But you want to do what's best for you.
I came from a family that was very politically connected and known nationwide. So I was an embarrassment to them while they were holding public office, and I was homeless. Um, but like I said, I have over the years just said, "Honey, be blessed, be blah. I don't care. I'm me. If you don't accept me, then goodbye."
What
That's exact.
Ernestine asked. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's why it's critical to choose who you want in your support circle. That's exactly the truth.
Ernestine said, "I appreciate each of you being so transparent. What are your thoughts about your future?"
Longevity is in my family. My father was 90 years old when he passed. He just passed in July. My mother is 91. My aunt, who I took care of, I was her caregiver until she passed. She was 93. Another aunt was 106. So unfortunately, I probably will live a long, long time. So I have to get this right.
I am for the first time in my life, very optimistic about my future, because for a while, um, during one of my worst periods, and at my most reckless, I thought I was going to die of bipolar disorder, and so I might as well do whatever the heck I pleased because I wasn't going to live very long. And then as time went on, and as I got my new doctor, and I got support from my family and my siblings, and I made more friends, I began to have a lot more hope. And like Denise was saying, my grandmother lived until she was 96 on my mother's side. So, and my mother is like healthy as a horse. So we all believe she's going to live till, forever. Um, but I have a lot of hope. There's still things I want to do. Um, I just got elected to be on the board of New Day Wellness Center, which was like a bucket list item to be on a board. And they serve people who have homelessness, addictions, mental illness. They're in Aberdeen, Maryland, and I get to work at NAMI. And I drive people to school and I tutor. So my life is full of things. And I just went to a bonfire last night with a bunch of friends. And so there's so many things I can still do. And when I was first diagnosed with a mental illness, I thought that I was, worthless, and that there was nothing I could do, and that there was no hope. And now I just have so much hope. And there's days when I get out of the doctor's office, or, you know, get out of someplace, and I'm going to drive, and I'm just filled with this amazing sense of happiness and peace, because I am achieving so much comparatively to what I thought I could achieve.
What are your thoughts about your future? I want to go back to address that again. Like I said, longevity is in my family. And what I meant by I have to get this right because I do not want to end my life in turmoil or in bitterness about what has happened in my life. So anything that steals my joy, I throw it over my shoulder. I try to take pleasure and take joy in simple things because those are the things that you can hold on to. You know you're not going to lose. Someone's smile, that's something you're not going to lose. You'll have it with you forever. I had my father with me forever. He was a good man, and he's moved on, and but I can take pleasure, and I'll never lose the smiles and the support that he gave me for all those years.
What would you say to young adults who may have the same diagnosis? Gosh, that's a very good question, Ernestine. Do you want to go first, Denise, or you want me to go?
Sure, I watched my children as they became adults, and they're in their 40s now. But I watched them as they were young adults struggle with their diagnoses. My son has got the closest diagnosis to me. I watched them struggle with their diagnosis, and that gave me um, purpose uh, to lead by example, to let them see that their lives is not going to be over, that love is possible for them, a future is possible for them, and a purpose in life is possible for them. So that's what I would tell them. I put them in situations where there would be people that could lead by example.
I would say it's the best that you can do is give them hope. You know, have them listen to people's stories or share stories with them of people who have accomplished things and let them know that they can accomplish things. That was my biggest challenge as a young person when I was diagnosed and I was in my 20s. My biggest hurdle was that I didn't believe I could accomplish anything. And I remember I went to my doctor's office, who's my psychiatrist, who's the same psychiatrist I have now, and he asked to see my resume. And I was like, why would you want to see my resume? You know, it's not important. I'm not working. I can't, accomplish anything. And it was like, it's important, you know, these are the skills that you have. And I just, it, but bipolar disorder and my diagnosis of mental illness really robbed me of a lot of stuff in the beginning. Because it robbed me of self confidence. It robbed me of self esteem. I just thought I didn't have there was nothing for me to do. And it turns out there was a lot of stuff for me to do. And, I'm so glad I never succeeded when I was suicidal because I would have lost so much. And uh, that's, you know, it's something that you can, it, for me, it never goes away. You know, I have a mental illness and it's there. But it doesn't rob me of everything. I can still accomplish things even with a mental illness. Any other questions or thoughts?
It's the young adults that give me the most hope. Um, I am a child of the civil rights era, and to see the young adults come to say, I'm me, you're gonna accept me, or I'm going to walk away from you," is a good sign. They're demanding acceptance, they're demanding respect, and then they're demanding to be treated with dignity. And they're my little sheroes and heroes.
I think there's just as we, have improved in our treatment of mental illness and as we try to erase the stigma. I've gone into schools to speak to people. Harford County Public Schools had me a couple years ago to come in and speak before COVID about living with a mental illness. And I just think the more we speak about it, the less power it has over us. Because for me, I when I was living with a more active mental illness, and I was keeping secrets from my parents and different people. Secrets have power over you. Whereas if you don't keep it a secret, and you can share to the best of your ability, it loses its power to make you. Um, it just loses its power. And if you're open and people are open, it just there's so much hope that can be had for it.
What do you do when a new therapist says they haven't diagnosed you with anything yet, but you already told them you've been diagnosed in the past for 3 years, basically making you feel invalidated? How would you handle the situation? That happened to my son, and he fired the therapist actually, and got him a new therapist. He interviewed the therapist as if he was hiring somebody to do a professional job for him. He had a list of things that he wanted to accomplish while he was in therapy, and he's been in therapy for a year. They decided that he wasn't going to be on medication, that he didn't need medication, and he says, "But I don't feel well." And he had. I said, "Baby, you have to advocate for yourself." He's 40 years old. He's still my baby. And I said, "Baby, you have to advocate for yourself." And I said, "You're just going to have to fight until you find one that provides you the right medication," because he was recently suicidal. So it's a matter of, and my daughter's the same way. She's just like, "Sayonara, sucker. I'm not paying you. If you're not gonna help me, I'm moving on to the next doctor." And I, on the other hand, have had one doctor, and I'm 68 years old.
Sarah, you're muted if you're talking.
You're right, Mary. Advocating for oneself is very powerful. Hope empowers you to be a good advocate for yourself. If there is anyone in this workshop that I would like them to know to take away is hope. Take that away from this workshop. If you do that, then I think Sarah and I have accomplished a lot.
The unmute button will be right under me and Marquise, in between the camera button and the monitor with the red line through it. It's the little mic.
While we're waiting for Sarah to come on, are there any other questions?
And Sarah, if the button's not working or you can't find it, just refresh your page and then come back on and press that share audio and video button. It'll be in the top right of this hop-in screen. You refresh your page up at the top left, the little spinny button with the arrow. Should be to the left of the button that looks like a house.
What helped give you confidence when sharing your story with an audience for the first time? Well, everybody in Baltimore has seen me homeless, so that's it. That gave me confidence. Can't get any worse from there. And by the way, I haven't been homeless in 22 years. And I've been sharing my story for 22 years.
Okay, does that work?
Yep.
Yep, you're back.
I had to close out. Sorry, I'm not sure what happened.
It's okay.
What let's see, what helped give you confidence when sharing your story for the first time? I was excited. It was a little while from the time I was trained to the time I shared my story. And I was so nervous, but I was super excited because in Our Own Voice, which is a project I use to tell my story from NAMI, is such a good program. It's my favorite program in the world. And so I just was confident that I could make a difference. I had an excellent trainer, and he was, we prepped for our story, and I was just super excited. And the comments that I got from telling my story were excellent. You know, people were very pleased. And sometimes people ask a lot of questions, and sometimes people don't ask very many questions. But once they get comfortable, they sometimes ask more questions. But it's just I just always have an excitement when I get to tell my story.
She may get excited. I get a little nervous.
I sometimes jumble up my story though, and then one of the presenters who I present for Harvard Community College.
See, what happened to her is what I was afraid was going to happen to me.
Yeah, Sarah, your mic cut out there. Just make sure it's plugged in, and if you have a button on the cord, just make sure that's either pressed or not pressed.
I think Sarah mentioned that sharing your story makes you have control or power, and it doesn't take power away from you. Because secrets can take power away from you. Mm. Are there any other questions? I would like to mention that it's. Are there any books that help? I'm not much into self-help books. But I forgot what I was going to say, Jeff. Let's see. What was that I was talking about? Forgot. Had a senior moment.
I sometimes have looked for. I had a DBT book that I used one time for dialectical behavioral therapy. So I did some, and I had Feeling Good by David Burns. And so there were some therapy strategies books that I used. And I always get recommendations for help for books, but I usually am one who like starts a book and then doesn't finish it. So I have all these like half finished books at my house. But I like quotes and stuff like that. Um like there's a quote that says if you're handed it, you can handle it, and I just have like different quotes that are around in my room. Mary, that's funny. I'm the same exact way too. Does anybody have any books that they've read to answer Jeff's question? Does anybody have any books that they've read that have helped you? I'd have to look through my bookshelves. I keep giving books away because I collect so many of them, and then I don't read them. And my dad's like, "Why do you need all these books?"
Rather than reading books, one thing I learned from many hospitalizations is that having occupational therapy helps me tremendously. Music therapy helps me tremendously. And some things that I do, I paint a little bit, do watercolors a little bit, and I make beads out of watercolor paper, and I paint them, and then I make jewelry out of it and donate it to nonprofits, and they use it in their galas to sell. They use it in their galas to raise money at their silent auctions. And the most one of my necklaces has raised has been $900.
Whoa, lady, that is awesome.
But it was mixed media. Yep. The nonprofit got $900.
That is awesome. I used to make projects, but then if I came home with my projects, my dad would be like, "What are we going to do with this?" So I got into word searches for a while. Inspirational mental health TV, movies, or shows.
Whatever gives you peace, that's what you do. I don't need to see mental health movies or mental health shows anymore. I have living examples in the flesh around me. I have family members that I can turn to for inspiration. So I'm sometimes even my mother is inspiration. She fought very hard to see me. She said she fought hard to get her daughter back again. She wanted that daughter that she said that wouldn't give up on anything, that would fight till the end, that was resourceful, honest and kind. She wanted all that back again. And she wasn't going to stop till she had it all back again. And a NAMI person that I love dearly, she was a NAMI basics trainer. She said, "Your mother is like a pit bull." And she meant that as a compliment. If she was just going to drag me into into recovery if she had to, and she did have to. But having somebody that'll stand by me means a lot more than any book or any movie or show.
I enjoy watching like crime shows, but not. I wouldn't say that I enjoy what. And Blue Bloods is one of my favorite shows, but I like it when they feature, because sometimes they feature episodes dealing with mental health, and it's just interesting to see how they feature it and how they deal with it. Because I've seen some episodes, so if I happen to see something that deals with mental health in a positive way, I find that to be exciting. But I don't necessarily see. And then sometimes PBS has documentaries, and we'll turn it on and watch a PBS documentary that has to do with mental health in some capacity. But I don't necessarily seek it out. And some movies I find that try to deal with mental health don't do such a good job. But I found recently that I've been out with friends and missing my favorite TV shows. And I'm like, that to me is a good thing, because now I'm relying on my friends, not relying on them, but I'm seeing my friends. And that's more important to me than making the next TV show. So I feel like that's a very positive thing for me, that I'm surrounding myself and interacting more with my friends, so that I don't need, and not that you won't catch me at the TV flipping channels, some days of the week, because they're replaying NCIS, which is like my all time favorite show. But I found too that, friends and other activities can be just as rewarding. And I just like to read light mysteries if I'm reading books. But that's kind of where my perspective is. And I see some people put some books in the chat that they enjoyed. Ernestine put one in and Jeff put two in. So if people are interested, they can get that from the chat.
Someone said they love aromatherapy. I was talking with my daughter. I used to use aromatherapy, and she remembered that. And she knew I was really stressed and really upset. And she stopped by the house, which she doesn't do often. And she had a Bath and Body Works bag, and in it was a spray bottle of aromatherapy. My favorite scent, eucalyptus. I didn't know she remembered, and it just made my day. So aromatherapy really is something good. Another thing that I found, I have fish. And
you have fish?
I have a fish. I have an aquarium, and I had sharks and goldfish and all catfish and all that kind of stuff. I had a whole, setup, and I would watch them. And my daughter said, "Why do you watch the fish, Mom? That's so boring." I said, "Watch them." And they would move the furniture. I call them their toys and furniture. They would move it slowly over that way, and then they'd move it slowly over that way. I just go. And she says, "What are you doing?" So you can find anything to ground you. To ground you is an important thing. Finding something to ground you, and to do mindfulness on. Mindfulness meditation, which I learned in peer to peer. Yeah. So I do mindfulness meditation with my fish.
I'm coming over to see your fish. Fish are cute.
Yep, they are something. I love them.
All right. Thank you so much, Denise and Sarah, for such a great presentation. That is all the time we have now. So thank you all so much for